My name is Alexis Rogers, and I'm the Customer Relationship Lead here at RightCapital. And I want to welcome you to our RightTraining webinar today on identifying planning opportunities using RightIntel. Now, this particular planning tool that we have in your advisor dashboard is going to be a prime space to see a lot of book of business insights. So it's going to be that book of business management station. Within that particular tool, there's a lot of insights that you can find regarding key planning opportunities, insights regarding the demographics of your book of business, and also just better tracking in terms of client activities and some just additional insights regarding how to maybe engage them further in the system if you are choosing to engage them in that way. So we're going to be diving into how you can start to better leverage RightIntel in your practice. We have a couple of new visuals that are available with the tool that we're going to be covering, how you can also review as well. Now, as always with any webinar, we're also going to be covering the different resources that you do have available to you when leveraging RightCapital. One of those resources being that during this webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A section to type out your questions there. But shifting gears into RightCapital, when we log into RightCapital, we are brought to what is called our advisor dashboard. This is where we'll see our client list and we'll be able to start to create and refine client plans. But all these remaining subtabs you'll see in your advisor dashboard are going to be vital spaces for you as an advisor that can better enhance your practices as an advisor. One of them being in the focus for today's conversation is the RightIntel dashboard. So if you click into the RightIntel dashboard, there's a couple of different pieces of the tool that can be pretty pivotal in terms of bettering your success in leveraging RightCapital. One of the first spaces being the dashboard that's available under RightIntel. This is where we are going to see some nice visuals of the analytics of your book of business. This is also customizable in terms of what we see and the ordering, and I'm going to show you how you can also reorder the flow here, and also how you can add some of these visuals if you're not seeing them defaulted already. So in our advisor dashboard, this is where we will see the total number of clients we have in our book of business. We will also see the total value of invested assets that we have. We'll also see any sort of dips or growth that we have for invested assets since the previous month's end. In this case, it's not surprising, a little bit of market fluctuations, a little bit of a drop for my book of business. And I will also see here the percentage of managed assets. So this will display, if you are leveraging that managed checkbox, the percentage of those assets that you have marked as managed that you own. And I will show us how we can start to modify that as well. We will also see further down below just some additional insights when it comes to our book of business, including the total invested assets by account type. We will see the percentage of taxable assets, tax deferred, and also tax-free. Now, this is a great space to see that in this particular case, I have a pretty large portion of the book of business in tax deferred assets. So that's maybe an indicator to myself of, hey, maybe we need to start evaluating things like contributing to either tax-free assets, or maybe we're reviewing Roth conversions, just some additional insights there for your use. We will also see the total number of clients per client group. We will also see the client demographics by age. So we can see the average age for my book of business is mid-50s, 54, but we will also see the percentage of the book of business that falls within the different age ranges. So we can see I have a little bit of a nice array of the different age ranges, but in this case, mostly focusing on pre-retirees. So we'll see down below also the client demographic in regards to employment, how much of the book of business is in the retiree phase, and pre-retiree. Not surprising based off of that average age of 54, that most of my clients are also pre-retirees. And that can be some of those insights that we can rely on to better understand the book of business, although we probably know most of them are pre-retirees, but it could shift the focus for maybe your planning process in the future and maybe any initiatives that you're looking to roll out. We will also see a ranking here of the top clients by net worth. We also see the top clients by cash balance. Let's see that nice ranking here. And some of the newer visuals that are available in the RightIntel dashboard is the top clients by logins. Now, this is going to be reliant upon the client being directly engaged in RightCapital. If they are engaged in the system and they are logging in, we will see the rankings here by those logins. You'll also see the top clients by outstanding tasks. So especially in this case, have a couple with a fair amount of outstanding tasks, and that's maybe my indicator to see which of those tasks are my duties that I need to make sure that I have those completed, and which ones might be client facing that I need to work with them a little bit more closely on completing. We will also see the top clients by vault uploads as well, and the clients per risk category if we have risk as well. So we can see the average risk score for my households are 68. We will see kind of a breakdown of the percentage of the different classes that they're falling in as well. So one thing that I want to note is that this is customizable in terms of the ordering and the flow that we're going to see here. And if you don't see any of these, maybe the top clients by cash balance, that might be because either we remove that, if we click on the X button, we can delete that one, or you can go up to add it at any point in time by clicking on the add button and then adding that visual back in. So if you are missing any of these visuals, you can always add it back by just clicking on the add button. We can also reorder the visuals by just dragging and dropping them as well. So maybe I want this to be one of the first ones that I see. I want to see some of the nice analytics in the visuals that we have. We can start to drag and drop as needed. Now, there is a couple of important things to note. As you might have noticed, a couple of these things are relying upon just additional categorizations that you're doing as an advisor. One of the first ones that I want to touch on is just ensuring that you're checking off the appropriate assets that are managed. So if you do have any sort of assets under management, where you can go to make sure that this figure is an accurate representation of your book of business. Because as we start to dive into opportunities, we also have an opportunities tab dedicated to the assets that you don't yet manage. So it is important that that's an accurate representation. And in order to make sure that your assets are appropriately allocated as under your management as the advisor, we're going to open up a client case study. So we're going to go back to the clients list. We're going to open up one of my client plans by clicking on the arrow icon. And when we get to the profile section, whether it's profile blueprint or net worth, whichever one you might prefer, we would just want to click into one of the investment accounts that we do manage. So if we open up any investment account, and whether you are creating a new investment account or you are in the process of just modifying or correcting an existing investment account, whether it's linked or not linked, what's going to be determining whether or not you have this account listed as under your management for the RightIntel dashboard and the analytics when it comes to key opportunities is you selecting this checkbox here that is indicating that this is a managed asset. So in this case, I have this checked off as a managed asset as something under my AUM, but if it is not, I would deselect that checkbox and hit save. And you will see the same thing across all the other investment accounts as well. So it's one of the things that is important to note that when it comes to the RightIntel dashboard and the analytics and opportunities, a lot of that is reliant upon the information you're entering in the system. Now, another thing you might be noticing as a trend too when it comes to some of the RightIntel analytics is that it also considers what you have indicated for client groups. So I just want to note, if we go to 3 dots and under client settings, this is where you can go to access the client groups section. Now, under the client group section, this is where you can go to create new client groups. So if you are looking to expand your sorting of clients, maybe you're trying to separate them by the tiers that you offer or the planning niches, like the student loan planning or estate planning group that I have, for example, this is where you can go to create that new client group. One of the very important selections that we make is whether or not that client group is included in the RightIntel dashboard. So just as an example, I've excluded my sample client plans because I don't want those figures to be impacting my RightIntel dashboard. I don't want to see those opportunities because those aren't my real clients. Same thing for some of my test clients, for example. And maybe there's a shift when it comes to one of my tiers. Maybe it's not going to be one that's going to be so proactively engaged. We can deselect that group from this checkbox or check off the box to make sure that they are included. And I see another question too regarding just adding or sorting clients into those client groups. Once we do create new client groups, or maybe you're looking to categorize existing clients, we can do so by going back to the clients list, selecting that client, and we go to the very bottom of the personal info tab here. You can indicate which group that they fall under. And in this case, the Adams family falls under the retiree group. But if you needed to put them into a different grouping, maybe the estate planning group, we can select that from the dropdown and hit save. So those are all just a couple of important things to note as you are starting to leverage RightIntel in your practice. That client groups is important, especially if you do leverage sample client plans and you wanted to make sure that those aren't impacting the RightIntel dashboard or the analytics here, that you can exclude those, and also how you can start to sort clients into client groups if you're looking to do so as well. So those are just important things to note before we dive into things like the client overview tab. So under the client overview tab, this is where we can see some additional insights regarding our book of business and our clients. Starting with the summary tab, this is where we can see the sorting of all my clients. We can see which client group that they fall under. We can also see their total net worth, how much of that is the invested assets, how many open tasks that they have, and we can also see when we last the client last logged in as well. So we can see not a lot of engagement for some of my clients. Maybe that's a room for growth for myself. We can also go to the insurance tab to see what is happening in terms of coverage options for our clients. We can see once again the client name, what group they fall under, what is their ages for the client and co-client respectively, and then what kind of policies we already have for the client when it comes to life insurance benefits, the number of policies, long-term care insurance policies, disability insurance policy, and also property and casualty. And for example, with this one, we can see that we do have one policy entered, and I see there's no death benefit entered. So that's maybe an indicator to me that I need to go in and check to make sure I enter that illustration. Maybe we're still waiting for that. But we can see that information here by clicking into any of these headers. We can also sort these by lowest to highest or highest to lowest. And in this case, we have a couple of higher coverage options or life insurance benefits for some clients. We can click into it to see the breakdown. We can see that both client and co-client are covered by a nice death benefit and just some additional insights for our reference. And you will also be able to open that client plan directly. So maybe when we were reviewing one of my clients that has a couple insurance policies that is missing the death benefit, that's an indicator to me like, hey, maybe I need to check in. I need to make sure I enter that. You can smoothly open up that client plan by clicking on the arrow button there. That's then going to bring you to that client's plan, and you can start to modify any of those parameters when it comes to the insurance policy. So anything you're seeing back in the RightIntel dashboard, and it's maybe a notification for yourself in a way to say, I need to make modifications to that plan, you can easily do so by just clicking on that information. And then finally, under activities, this is where we go to see what is happening in terms of client engagement. Now, especially, this is going to be very focused on the idea that the client is invited to access RightCapital, especially if you've granted the client access to make changes. So that's something you can restrict or grant them access to do, especially if they have access to make adjustments to their plan. We would also see here if they have made any sort of adjustments to their plan in the last 4 weeks. We will also see the client's name, of course, for reference, the client group once again. We will also see when they last logged in, when's the first time they logged in or accepted your invitation, and how many times have they logged in general. And if they did have any sort of adjustments to the plan when they logged in, they've got that permission to do so, we would see here what they were modifying. So if they did modify, say, their bank account or they modified their vacation goal, we would see here that, Aria went in and modified her vacation goal. So you'd see additional insights here, and you might be familiar with the normal notification that I'm going to show how you can modify. But if you're looking for a further breakdown, because that report is typically going to be just indicating a higher level overview, this is going to be a great space to see a further, more detailed breakdown of what the client's actually doing in their plan when they're logging in. But that is going to be reliant upon them even having access or permission to make modifications in the system, of course. Now, you will notice throughout each of these different sub-tabs, you can download all this information into an Excel spreadsheet, into a report, by clicking on this blue download icon. So that's just another key tip here, that anytime you see this blue download icon in RightCapital, that is an indicator that you can download this information into an Excel spreadsheet. Up next is one of the very key spaces for RightIntel opportunities, especially if you're looking to kind of just mine your book of business or see some maybe opportunities that you might have missed in your normal review, is our opportunities tab. So you'll see a couple of just different sub-tabs here focused on different planning opportunities, starting with cash opportunities. So we can see here the list of all the clients, the client groups, and also the cash balance that is available for each client. You will also see any changes that have occurred since previous month's end. So we can see here we have a couple of clients that have a very large cash balance, And especially if we are in that practice of investment management or just maybe looking at ways to invest more, this might be some of our indicators here that we can start to have additional discussions about reprioritizing our savings, maybe not storing so much in the bank for them. Maybe we're starting to have a deeper discussion regarding contributing to things like the taxable brokerage account or accounts you might have under your management. And it also could be a discussion too about liquidity analysis. So it might be an indicator of, hey, we have 1.2 million in cash for our John Travolta plan. Maybe we have that discussion of we've superseded our liquidity goal, even if we had to cover all of our expenses over 12 months. So maybe it's an opportunity for us to start to look at different kinds of products or savings vehicles that we can start to create a larger retirement portfolio. So this could be one of those opportunities available. Once again, you will see the open client button here. So if I wanted to dive into that client plan, we can click on the arrow icon, and that's going to bring us to the actual plan that we have for that client, where we can start to see what is going on in terms of that cash availability. Now that is going to be relying upon the bank account entry. It's focusing on what's in the bank accounts. Because somebody's also just asked for a quick question clarifying, that is going to be pulling from the information we enter for clients' bank accounts. Under RightIntel opportunities, we go to the assets held away. This is going to be that next piece, especially when we're looking at those assets that we do not yet manage, where we will see the assets that we have not under our purview yet. So we can see here the list of clients. We can also filter by the number of accounts that a client has that we do not yet manage. We will also be able to click into the header here to see which of those accounts maybe are the ones that we have the opportunity to manage. So for example, maybe we do not manage Roth IRAs. Maybe we do focus on 401ks though. So we'd say, hey, we do have one account that we can maybe talk about putting under our book of business and start to manage. And we know that the Roth IRA is just not one that we focus on. So we can see that breakdown for each of those different clients that we have. So once again, we see a 401k here, which we do look at maybe managing. Maybe that's an additional conversation we can have with them. We'd also see any sort of growth or changes to those accounts that we do not yet manage from the right column here as well. Under the debt sub-tab, this is where we can see just some insights regarding the different types of debts that clients might have. Now, this is one that can be pretty impactful when it comes to the insights we can derive from here, especially because we can also sort by the different types of debts. This one could be a little bit more eye-opening, especially for those that might be having clients entering the current plan themselves, or maybe when we're starting to expand our book of business to a certain degree. This is a great space to see how much do we have in terms of mortgage balances for clients, pretty hefty debts that we have across a lot of our book of business. Same thing for other types of mortgages, home equity lines of credit or home equity loans. Same thing for reverse mortgages, car loans, student loans, or other loans as well. So this can be one of those eye-opening spaces that we have here in regards to some of the different types of debts that a client might have. We can also see the balances for each of those debts. The type of loan will be listed here for reference as well, and also the different rates. So especially if maybe we're looking at an opportunity where maybe the rates for debts have dropped, maybe that's an opportunity to start to look at refinancing some things if that's an additional planning opportunity that you're looking to get into. This is one of those ones that I do see often being the most eye-opening in regards to just the burden of debt that a lot of clients might be carrying. Maybe it's just not something that's yet on the top of clients' minds, but it can be just pretty insightful in regards to just some of the different types of debts that are spread across maybe your book of business. And you can sort these by balance. So if you're trying to target first-year clients with the most debts, we can have that ranking here. And see, we have some pretty hefty debts for some clients, and others might be a little bit more fairly experiencing some different types of mortgage debts across the board. So maybe a different type of opportunity we're looking at is expanding our book of business and our planning offerings. And perhaps debt is not yet one that we look into. Debt might be that opportunity for some advisors. Maybe it's also student loans. So if we do see maybe based off of my analytics, we kind of are seeing a rise in those age ranges that do carry student loans. Maybe that's an opportunity for myself as the advisor to start to evaluate, should we have those additional discussions regarding student loan planning? Are we making sure that our clients are equipped for those types of more advanced planning topics? Maybe it's something we start to look to offer towards clients in the future as well. So a lot of different insights can be found here under the debt module. Under the insurance section, this is where we can see just which insurance policies are going to be expiring, either already expired or which ones are expiring in the future. And this is also a space that can be beneficial, even if we're not looking at actually recommending insurance products, especially for things like term insurance or insurance policies that might be relying upon workplace. Maybe we're having that discussion. Hey, did anything change? Did you actually renew that term policy? Did you get a new one? Did you get a new kind of insurance policy with your work? We can also view the difference of either all times for sorting, ones that expire this year or ones that are expiring next year as well. Now, one of the very popular spaces in RightCapital, and this is one of the ones that are often most sought after when it comes to just ensuring notifications are set up, is the key events tab. So under RightIntel opportunities and under key events, this is where we will see just a couple of key events that a client might incur across their lifetime. And this is also where we would see that sorted across the year. So right now I have it filtered for key events that are occurring this year. We can view those from across all time, this month or next year. But for the different key events in a client's lifetime that you can receive notification on, or just a heads up on, are things like them reaching retirement age, Social Security filing age based off of what's entered, a Medicare filing eligibility, age 50 catch-up contributions, age 59 and a half penalty-free withdrawals is another big one, especially if we are looking at things like Roth conversions. We saw in my book of business a huge percentage of assets is in tax deferred. So that's going to be a good kind of indicator for myself and that notification of starting to more seriously evaluate Roth conversions at that point in time once they reach that penalty-free withdrawal age. And we also have the reaching RMD age, required minimum distribution age. This one is often a pretty useful one when it comes to just having that reminder. So from here, we can also sort by the different client groups. So if I'm just trying to really focus on, say, my estate planning group for some of these key events, I can do so. Or maybe it's one of your tiers that you have. You can select those from here, or we can keep it to all client groups and sort as needed. So you can see here a lot of different key events have occurred across 2025 so far, but especially if we're trying to use this as an indicator to have preemptive conversations with clients regarding some of these more complex things, or maybe just different planning opportunities that you're looking at pursuing. This is a great space to see, probably in a couple months, who is going to be hitting each of those different key events. So in particular, we can see in July, we've got age 50 catch-up contributions with my client, Nick. We've already had that conversation with him, so he's all set. But some of the ones that are a little bit later in the year, in September and October, we do see our Travolta family is going to be hitting both retirement and Social Security filing in September. So maybe this is our preemptive notification here that we want to have that conversation now just to check in, make sure nothing has changed in terms of their prioritization, nothing's changed in terms of a retirement goal, because it's not unusual for those things to maybe have a shift. Maybe something happens health-wise, maybe something happens where we need to have to reprioritize retirement towards maybe a later year, or maybe you yourself just like to have that preemptive check-in to make sure that the plan still works with them retiring in September. Whatever it may be, this can be that indicator to take that additional initiative of maybe reviewing the plan with the client. So maybe that's when we open the client plan, we start to maybe assign tasks to ourselves as the advisor and just make sure that the client is equipped for that phase in their life where they're both going to be pursuing Social Security filing. Maybe you're providing them a list of resources to go over that process. Maybe you're providing them with that pamphlet that you have, and also just giving them your guide for post-retirement. So a lot of different insights here. One that's also very popular is the Medicare filing one, just because this can be a pretty confusing process for a lot of clients. So if we're looking at and aiming at demystifying the Medicare filing process, this might be my indicator here that, hey, we need to make sure that we're granting the client access to the Medicare module that we have for educational purposes, or maybe we want to provide them with our resources, have a check-in meeting before Medicare filing age to make sure that they understand their options, make sure that they are, if they are in a group plan with more than 20 or less than 20 people, that's also going to indicate their enrollment period. So a lot of different pieces of the puzzle come into play here when it comes to Medicare filing. So maybe that's just an additional conversation you're having. This is a way you can have all this information and provide that nice additional layer of white glove service in kind of a more automated way, or just an easier way to track. So a lot of what we covered is often pursued as just an automatic notification in RightCapital, So if we are looking to guarantee we're getting those notifications, we do have the option to set up your notifications and to change the frequency for your notifications as well. So if you go to the bell icon in the upper right-hand corner, this is where we can go to access our notification center. So your notification center as an advisor is going to list all the notifications that you have on just that plain notification tab. But this is also where you go to set up your notification settings. So under notification settings, there's a lot of different things in the system that you can choose to get notified on. And there's 3 different frequencies or ways that you can choose to have those notifications sent to you. So one of the first ways that you can receive a notification from RightCapital is from a immediate notification email when any of these activities happen. So that's things like onboarding with a client. So you can get an immediate notification if a client completes the data entry process or the onboarding process for themselves, if they sign up using your invitation. The same thing for vault activities. If the client is engaged and we have them uploading or downloading files from the vault, you can get that immediate notification. And the same thing for risk assessments when they complete those as well. So this particular one is what's referred to as the more immediate notification once any of those activities occur with a client. That's the first option. The other option is for a daily report summary email. Now, this is, of course, a once a day email where you can have a longer list of activities summarized in that report. That includes client activities. So this is what I was referring to before. You might already have this checked off, but this is where you can go to indicate that you want that daily report summary in the email formatting. For the client updating their information, if they do make modifications, you can get that included in the report summary. And if they are completing or updating tasks, and the same thing for your own task frequency for ones you might be assigning to yourself, or maybe that you've allowed the client to assign back to you. And also, very importantly, key events from RightIntel alerts. So you can receive that in the daily report summary as part of that once a day email. The other option for a notification in RightCapital is to just simply include that activity or that notification in the notification center. So we can check off everything in particular as I've done. And that's what we're going to see when we access that bell icon in the notification section. This is where we can see all those notifications that I have. You can see I have a lot of different tasks, but you can also sort by the different types of notifications. So if I'm trying to just focus on my RightIntel alerts, I can see that information from here. We can also sort by vault activity, client task, client activity as well. So this is how we can start to reprioritize what we want to see for notification frequency for some of these things, how we want to see those notifications. And then also, if we don't want to see those emails, we can make that adjustment from here. One thing that I do want to note, it is really important that if you are looking at leveraging the email notifications, just making sure that you have verified your email in RightCapital, which you can do by going to gear icon, account settings and security. So that's just one of the ways we can start to streamline that process by getting that email notification. Just for reference too, if we do have that notification regarding client activities and you're looking for that deeper dive insight into what the client was actually changing, that's going to be accessed by going to RightIntel, client overview, and under activities. Because I see that was also a question that was asked too.